Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
And we're here for a review. Salty, tell them what we're reviewing this time.
We are doing a little Bukowski today. Charles Bukowski, Something's Knocking at the Door.
Chucky Buck.
Been a while since we've done some Bukowski on the channel here.
Yeah.
Not saying that we don't do a lot of Bukowski, but there's nothing wrong with that. So, how do you want to start this?
Couple readings.
Do some readings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. You want me to start it?
Go ahead. Getting on my nerves.
Something's knocking at the door. A great white light dawns across the continent as we fawn over our failed traditions, often kill to preserve them, or sometimes kill just to kill. It doesn't seem to matter. The answers dangle just out of reach, out of hand, out of mind. The leaders of the past were insufficient. The leaders of the present are unprepared. We curl up tightly in our beds at night and wait. It is a waiting without hope, more like a prayer for unmerited grace. It all looks more and more like the same old movie. The actors are different, but the plot's the same. Senseless. We should have known. Watching our fathers, we should have known. Watching our mothers. They did not know. They too were not prepared to teach. We were too naive to ignore their counsel, and now we have embraced their ignorance as our own. We are them, multiplied. We are their unpaid debts. We are bankrupt, in money and in spirit. There are a few exceptions, of course, but these teeter on the edge and will at any moment tumble down to join the rest of us, the raving, the battered, the blind, and the sadly corrupt. A great white light dawns across the continent. The flowers open blindly in the stinking world, as grotesque and ultimately unlivable. Our 21st century struggles to be born.
Something's knocking at the door. A great white light dawns across the continent as we fawn over our failed traditions, often kill to preserve them, or sometimes kill just to kill. It doesn't seem to matter. The answers dangle just out of reach, out of hand, out of mind. The leaders of the past were insufficient. The leaders of the present are unprepared. We curl up tightly in our beds at night and wait. It is a waiting without hope, more like a prayer for unmerited grace. It all looks more and more like the same old movie. The actors are different, but the plot's the same. Senseless. We should have known watching our fathers. We should have known watching our mothers. They did not know. They, too, were unprepared to teach. We were too naive to ignore their counsel. And now we have embraced their ignorance as our own. We are them multiplied. We are their unpaid debts. We are bankrupt in money and in spirit. There are a few exceptions, of course. But these teeter on the edge and will at any moment tumble down to join the rest of us, the raving, the battered, the blind, and the sadly corrupt. The great white light dawns across the continent. The flowers open blindly in the stinking wind, as grotesque and ultimately unlivable. Our 21st century struggles to be born.
All right.
So we got 3 good things, 3 bad things, best line, literary analysis, rating, and recommendation. 3 good things, Dalton, go.
First one. This rings possibly more true today than when it was published. It's impressive how well it's aged. Number 2, Bukowski speaks to the raving, the battered, and the blind, and that is nice. It's nice to hear that. And number 3, you will find something here that speaks to you specifically. Something in this will ring true with you. Adrian?
This is nihilism meets hauntology. This feels like Bukowski clawed his way out of the grave for a cigar and one last poem. Last weekend.
Yeah.
And 3, the line, we are bankrupt.
You like that one.
We're bankrupt.
Okay. 3 bad things. The ending, I feel like it went for a poetic punch and it didn't deliver.
Okay.
Number 2, it feels almost preachy at times. It's very not Bukowski. I'll get to that a little bit later. And number 3, that 5th little stanza there that begins, there are a few exceptions, of course. It just feels out of place. I'm not sure it's necessary.
We got to stop doing this together. 1, this would be easy to gloss over. 2, No phrases really stick out, and phrases are what Bukowski is normally really good at, putting together 3 or 4 lines that really stick out. And 3 feels like Bukowski is setting up for a gut punch, but it doesn't come.
There you go. There you go.
Best line.
Best line, I'm going to give you a group of lines here because I think they have to go together because, like you said, there's not really a good punch in here. The leaders of the past were insufficient. The leaders of the present are unprepared. We curl up tightly in our beds at night and wait. It is waiting without hope, more like a prayer for unmerited grace.
We should have known watching our fathers. We should have known watching our mothers. They did not know. They too were unprepared to teach. We were too naive to ignore their counsel, and now we have embraced their ignorance as our own. We are them, multiplied. We are their unpaid debts. We are bankrupt. I don't like the last 2 lines of that, but in money and in spirit, that feels like it's just too much.
Okay, okay.
It's like we knew you were going there.
So where do you want to start digging in with this?
I think very much this is a conversation piece poem.
Okay.
At your local salon, bring this up and read it, and someone will have something to add.
Okay.
Unfortunately, everyone who's a staunch Democrat will blame the damn Republicans.
Okay.
And everyone who's a staunch Republican will blame the damn Democrats, never taking the time to realize that those 2 parties are some of the unpaid debts.
Okay. I agree with you. I feel like there is conversation to be had about this. I feel like if you read this poem to someone, they're going to feel something. That was one of my good points. It's going to speak to you some way.
I feel like this would be a good... So remember how our undergrad degree was just you pull out a piece of literature, everyone has read it, and you talk? Remember that? Yes. It was just, oh, so we read the £1 million banknote.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. I feel like this poem, with that class construct, would do well across campus in the, what is it called, where you're studying culture?
Humanities?
Not human. Where you're studying, I can't think of anything, I'm brain dead. Like psychology, but with groups of people.
Sociology?
Sociology.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like this is a literature class format in a sociology class.
Okay.
Is where you could do well with this poem.
I will agree with that. And honestly, like I said, this aged incredibly well.
Yeah.
This feels like it was written yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's great. This is I wrote this down. This is a poem for the millennials. But no one knows who Bukowski is.
Well, it's not a poem for the millennials. The sad truth is that this is a poem for everyone at every time.
Correct.
Because it always feels like our mothers and fathers were not prepared to teach because our mothers and fathers did not grow up in the same world in which we grew up.
Correct. Poem for millennials, yes. However, when was this written? At least in 93.
Yeah.
So at least 26 years ago, which leads us to believe that this is not just a problem for us today. This has been a consistent problem for a long time.
Not only that, Dalton, he's not writing as a child.
No.
He died in 94.
Yes.
So this is a guy who was born in 1923, I believe, talking about how his parents weren't prepared to teach him.
Correct. So this speaks true for everything, which leads to the conversation. We want to have that conversation again, that there's a bigger problem here. But man, does this just hit today.
Yeah.
It really, really does. Now, one thing I did mention in this here is Bukowski, it doesn't feel like Bukowski. It feels a little preachy at times. I will grant that it does have some Bukowski ideals. Everything's terrible, burn it all, salt the earth. This feels more of like a call to arms. This is not just the drunk at the corner store that I ran into and I had this great epiphany about him. This feels very different from all the other Bukowskis I've encountered.
It feels like Bukowski and Langston Hughes had a baby.
That's a good way of putting it. Absolutely. I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if that's a bad thing.
I didn't love this poem at first. The more I read it, the more I loved it. I think that this is one that really has... So you said this... You wanted to feel that gut punch at the end, right?
Yeah.
This is a blow to the dome.
Oh, you know the gut punch. You've already been punched to the gut. This is him just, stomping it in.
No, this is a blow to the dome. You've got to think about this one.
Okay.
This is a jab that doesn't hit you in the face, it hits you in the temple. Right? This is something that it hurts, but it doesn't hurt in your stomach because you've got enough food. Because ever since the 90s, we had enough cheap food that you didn't have to be hungry. But you had to think about life decisions while you were eating it.
Okay.
Because you still had to eat ramen noodles in your 30s. That's what this is.
Okay.
Does that make sense? The struggle is not as mighty as if you were actually hungry, but your health is suffering, and you have to figure out why.
Okay.
This is saying that you were never taught how to be a person.
Okay.
This is not saying that you suck as a person.
Fair enough.
This is not guttural. This is ephemeral.
All right. It works. It does. But again, you could put anybody else's name on this. Any other poet's name, and I'd say, yeah, absolutely. It sounds like they wrote it.
That's a strength, not a weakness, right?
I don't know. When I read Bukowski, I want Bukowski. We argue every time that, when you read a Bukowski, that's a Bukowski, man. You can recognize it. It's great. And it sets him aside from everyone else. It makes him unique.
If you read this out of context and someone told you it was Bukowski, would you feel surprised?
I think so.
Really?
I think so. This seems too big for Bukowski. Bukowski's problem is what happens on Bukowski's block. When he ran out of smokes and he ran out of liquor today. This is Bukowski's problem. This seems like Bukowski is he's tackling something that is far beyond him. It's much bigger.
Much bigger than his mother and father?
It seems much bigger than that, of course. This seems more of a national problem as opposed to just Bukowski's problems. Everybody's disappointed by their parents at some point in their life.
Sure.
I think that's what turns me off from this, is it feels just a little bit too big for Bukowski. It feels too preachy. It feels like somebody just standing on a podium and telling me, hey, the world sucks. This is why.
Well, it feels like a diagnosis.
Okay.
It feels like, it feels like the flyer that vaxxers ignore saying you need to be vaccinated, right?
Okay.
It feels like just a warning shot. It feels like a lot of things, but maybe you're right. Maybe it doesn't feel like a Bukowski. It is written on a larger scope normally than he works. I don't know why that's a weakness, though.
Again, it just feels bland.
This feels bland?
Yes. When you take out those unique Bukowski characteristics, what you crave in a Bukowski, that thing that keeps you up at night, the thing that haunts you, when you take it away, this is what you get. It seems very straightforward. It seems very, for lack of a better word, like politically motivated. Like, let's make things better. Let's address these problems. That's not Bukowski.
That is Bukowski.
I don't think so.
That's Bukowski at his very core.
I don't think so.
It's absolutely Bukowski. It doesn't feel that way oftentimes because he's going into the bone of a character that he's constructed. And this is very much on the flesh.
Okay.
But that's absolutely Bukowski.
It just feels
now,
like...
Political, I would argue against you on saying that this is political. This is anti-political.
For lack of a better word.
For lack of a better word.
I said for lack of a better word, political. It's more of a national
Right, but I
scale,
just gave you a better
scale.
word.
There you go.
Anti-political.
You feel better about that? It just... I think it suffers when you take Bukowski out of this. I feel, again, if you told me Langston Hughes wrote this, I'd say absolutely. I'd focus more on the fact that it says a great white light dawns.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like a Bukowski. Therefore, it's just average. There's no emotional connection that I usually get in a Bukowski with this.
Really?
Yep.
You haven't...
This is the news. This is CNN. You could turn this on. This is just the news to me. This is nothing.
But on the news, they don't tell you where it comes from.
It doesn't. But I can turn on any YouTube channel where somebody's talking about what's going on in current events. They're going to tell me this is the problem.
Well,
And maybe at this point, it's just I've grown stagnant with it. Maybe I've just been flooded with too much of this. But it just doesn't hit me like I wanted a Bukowski to hit me. It's disappointed because normally every one we go through I really enjoy. This one's okay. It just doesn't feel like a Bukowski. It doesn't have his voice.
really?
It doesn't. I'm sorry if you don't agree with me, but like...
It all looks more and more like the same old movie. The actors are different, but the plot's the same. Senseless. That doesn't feel like Bukowski to you.
No, it does not.
Really?
And again, maybe it's so real to us today, because let's be honest, every movie that you go see is the same movie. It's the remake of the one you saw 2 years ago.
I think you're taking things way too literally.
I think that's the only way to take this.
I don't think it is.
There's just no voice in this.
There's no voice in this?
There is no unique Bukowski voice, that voice that I want. Now, am I saying is it bad by any means? No, but I think it's okay.
You haven't said it's bad, you've said it's not good.
It's just okay. It's just not Bukowski.
I will grant, this is one of, this,
It's an interesting piece.
the more I think about it, and the more I've thought about it, this might be a top 100 poem for me.
You think so?
Though I don't know that I would put it in my top 50 Bukowski poems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mathematically, that doesn't make sense, because my top 100 poems isn't going to have 50 Bukowskis. But it's like I always say, The Avengers is the greatest comic book movie of all time. The Dark Knight is the greatest movie about a comic book character of all time.
Okay.
Right? So you might be right that this doesn't have all of the hallmarks of Bukowski, but to call this plain, I don't know where you're coming from.
So, given current events and everything, do I think you should read this? Do I think it is correct? Do I think it has a lot of meaning behind it? Absolutely. Honestly, like I said earlier, it feels like it was just written yesterday. That's gorgeous, to be able to write something that has that kind of sustainability. But when I buy the Pleasures of the Damned, collected poems of Bukowski, every one I turn to is a Bukowski poem. It has that Bukowski feel to it. This is not that. This could be in a collections of like a collected work of poems, like an anthology with anyone's name on it.
Called America the Beautiful?
Would have been fine. It feels like Bukowski almost selling out.
The more I'm letting you talk on this, the less I want to hear you.
It does. This seems like Bukowski just trying to be someone else.
Trying to be who?
I don't know. But it doesn't feel like Bukowski.
It feels like Bukowski's thoughts on something.
It doesn't
Is
feel like
Bukowski
it to
not
me.
allowed to have thoughts on something?
No, he is not.
Is Bukowski not allowed to write a poem that's not about cigars and booze?
It is supposed to be about cigars and booze, and it's supposed to make me feel bad inside.
This doesn't make you feel bad inside?
No, I'm numb to this at this point. This is just the same thing that I look at every news post I see every single day. This is scrolling through Facebook and see that there were 6 shootings today. I'm numb to this.
Well, even then, you're concentrating on just a couple lines there.
Where else would you like to turn?
Well, there's...
Everything looks the same.
The leaders of
actors
the
are different.
past were insufficient. The leaders of the present are unprepared. Who else is unprepared?
Everyone's unprepared.
Yeah. So what are the leaders?
Unprepared.
They're just us. You've got that small turn buried in there.
Nope. It just feels plain. It just feels dull. It is not what I wanted.
I think you need some Adderall.
You think so?
Yeah, I think you're mailing it in at this point.
I'm just...
You're mailing in the salt.
It's what it is, man.
This review is very plain from Dalton.
You really like The Bluebird, correct?
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous poem.
It's a gorgeous poem.
That poem destroys you. It makes you feel something.
Yeah.
That is a Bukowski poem. And Bukowski, for some reason, just sings that to me. That's why I really enjoy this. That's not this. This could have been written by anyone.
Okay. Why is that necessarily a bad thing? Isn't a multitude of voices a strength from a poet?
would you say that it's very easy to recognize an Emily Dickinson poem?
It can be.
It can be.
There,
This seems like the one he just slung because, oh, I got this one written, so let's put it in here. It feels unpolished.
I don't know. I think that perhaps it feels to me very much like the poem writing process for this one was different than his other poems.
I'd agree with that.
It feels with most of his poems like he's just Bukowskiing about his day,
Yep.
and something happens, and he's like, oh, that's the one today. That's the one I got to hit. This seems like this one took him a week to write.
And maybe that's why I don't like it. But again, if you have a collection of 100, 200 poems, I don't know how many are actually in here, not all of them are going to be flawless. You're going to have some like this that are just, eh. But honestly, no, it's not Bukowski to me.
Okay.
What do you got to say about this with the 5 minutes remaining?
The idea of our parents not preparing us. We talked on this a little bit. This is something that comes up quite often on this channel. And a lot of it, pardon me, came up through the Harry Potter series.
Okay.
For there to be a bridge between a Charles Bukowski review and the Harry Potter series is something that will only happen when you're talking about literature.
Okay.
The idea of being unprepared by a parent. Do you know your father's age?
Nope.
Do you know around your father's age?
Mid-60s?
How old was your father when you were born? Are you the oldest?
I'm the oldest from his second marriage.
Okay. So around how old was your father when you were born?
He was in his 30s.
You're coming up on that.
Yep.
Do you feel prepared to prepare a child?
God, no.
And this is one of those things that it's fun to project from there. Your parents weren't prepared to have a child. No one's prepared to have a child, right?
No.
No one's prepared to have a child. I'm not picking on your parents. No one's prepared to have a child. Because those little things go.
They do. There's no taking it back to the store either, man. Once you got it, you're stuck with it.
So once you have those, they're yours.
Okay.
But the kid, through the child's eyes, Dad is God.
Okay.
Right? Mom is God. These are the gold standards. You get older in life, and at some point, someone in history was old enough that said, well, something had to come before us. Something had to be our dad, our collective dad. Maybe there's a God.
Okay.
Assuming that maybe that God wasn't ready to have kids. Maybe this is, so the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible, the Torah, is full of stories basically of God making mistakes. And then he's got to flood the world because they didn't listen to me. Well, why did you make them with the capacity not to listen to you? And why did you judge them so harshly for doing so? Or the Israelites were sent out to slaughter people, right? Well, why did those people need slaughtering? Did you make them too?
Okay.
So this idea of a flawed God is something that we've very much gotten away from.
Okay.
But it was very much with us in the beginning of gods.
It's fair.
Take a step back from the Israelites to the Greeks and the Romans. What are their stories of gods?
Well, Zeus was a womanizing, just basically did whatever he wants.
Yeah, who had to castrate his own father.
Yeah.
Which meant his father was sort of a jerk, huh?
I'm surprised my father didn't waterboard me as a child. So, I get it, but I understand where you're coming from.
Oh, we had different childhoods.
You tell me.
But so that idea, transcending one step past, from our parents being unprepared to God being unprepared.
Okay.
Does that remove from us the hope that our children will be prepared?
You always like to hope your children are prepared. That's usually...
What are the odds?
slim to none. But that's usually the first thing people say. You know, I want to do for
better
them.
for my kids
than for my parents did for me.
Did you know that we are the first generation in something like 10 generations that will be doing worse financially than our parents?
Oh, goody. I know we were not well off, but I didn't know, like,
Statistically, we will be worse off than our parents.
Good times. Well, you got a spare room?
I only have one room.
Well.
So what will that next generation look like? And I think, for me, in this poem, that's where this poem is heading.
Okay.
Is the next generation ever even mentioned?
No.
No. What's mentioned? The now and the past.
And the 21st century is struggling to be born.
But the next generation itself is not mentioned.
No.
Why is that? Why is the 21st century struggling to be born?
Because we're just now coming into it. Like, it's impossible to thrive in this.
This poem being written no later than 1993, that generation's already born.
Okay.
I mean, that's us.
Perhaps that
That's you and
generation is
me.
not actualized themselves. They don't have the opportunities because of previous statements in this.
And what are the odds we're going to?
Probably not.
This is about you and me.
Okay.
This is about us, Dalton.
Again,
This poem's about us, Dalton.
great. Again, this is...
Poem's not about Bukowski, Dalton. This poem's about you.
It's turning on the news, man. This is the same thing you hear every single night. The world sucks. People are getting shot left and right. All your political leaders are corrupt. They're unprepared. They have no idea what they're doing.
And where are you going?
Who knows? Hopefully to a better Bukowski poem after this, because that'll at least give me some pleasure out of it.
Some pleasure.
Some pleasure. Some pleasures of the damned.
Thumb, thumb, thumb!
Adrian,
Yeah.
what would you rate this?
I would give this 87 unpaid debts out of 100.
Okay.
Solid high B level effort from Bukowski.
79.
79?
79 dark times. This is average. It is average. It is borderline above average.
I'm interested to see what you're going to recommend for this.
You're not going to have a clue what it is.
Okay.
I actually stumbled upon it.
Okay.
This is a poem by Bertolt Brecht. Ever heard of him?
Yes. Bertolt Brecht.
German, I believe.
Yes.
The poem, I believe, is like, they call it like a farewell. But the original translation, and die Nachbornen, I'll try to post that down below as I butcher German. But it's gorgeous.
Okay.
It's all about dark times ahead and how we're basically doomed.
Okay. I want you to guess what I recommend.
Harlem.
No, but almost.
What?
Fight Club.
Yeah? Okay, well, that makes sense, yeah.
This is Fight Club in poem format.
You think so?
Yeah.
That's fair.
This is Fight Club in poem format.
That's fair. But, you know, Fight Club appeals to you.
My father went around setting up franchises, you know, and
Okay.
the senseless violence.
Well, we'll have to do some more Bukowskis on this. We'll have to work our way through this little book here and see what else we can dig up.
Yeah.
So, if you like this kind of thing, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Give this video a like as well, and let us know your thoughts on this, because we clearly have opposing views on it, which is fine. We can do that from time to time. And if you'd like to help us create more great content like this here on Strip Cover Lit, because we were unprepared by previous generations, there's a link, as always, to our Patreon to be found in the description below.